Welcome to the latest edition of Notes from the Control Tower, and in this episode I'll be discussing the January 2024 patch with exciting news of nerfs to overpowered planes. Hello there, and a few days ago the World of Warplanes team brought in update 2.1.25.1, or as we call it, a patch, but far from bringing the curtain down on the Christmas 2023 event for the Moonbat, it introduced some other significant changes, which we're going to talk about in this video. So we have the patch notes page here in front of us, and as we can see, Holiday Maneuvers has concluded. I hope those of you who were grinding hard for the Moonbat over the Christmas event got it, or at least got as far as you wanted to down that candy trail. I wasn't pleased that the World of Warplanes team gave us 4 or 5 days less this year to do that grind, and also that some of the grinds were just much more onerous than they were in previous iterations of this event, and I hope the World of Warplanes team won't do that again. The significant changes, I think, are under game balance, and they're so significant I'm going to talk about those separately in a few moments, so we'll skip over that for now. There are 2 new paint schemes coming in for the XP-54 and the P-61. These are in the style of the camouflages that started being introduced in 2023 with 4 bonus characteristics. That is the 3 bonus characteristics for the seasonal camouflages that you can get from using those camouflages, plus, for those of you interested in progressing through the game more quickly, 8% aircraft XP, and of course if the aircraft is specialised you can tick the accelerate crew training button and make that accelerate crew training instead. I like these sorts of things going on sale. They don't affect the performance of the aircraft in battle, but they also allow you an opportunity to put some money back into the game if that's what you want to do. So I'm pleased to see these coming along. They're not available yet. As it says here quite clearly, the paint schemes will become available in future premium shop offers and also as event rewards, which is interesting. I look forward to that. There's a new emblem coming into the game for St. Valentine's Day. Normally there are some missions you need to grind, fairly simple to complete in order to get the emblem. Occasionally those emblems carry a bit of a surprise and the bonus characteristic is more than you would expect, but usually it's 2% crew experience. It probably will be, probably not going to be too exciting other than just something else to put in your hangar. Pleased to see that the World of Warplanes team have got the time, under what are trying conditions, to do bug fixes. And one of them is pretty significant. Before New Year, I entered a conversation with the World of Warplanes team in which I pointed out that the XP-67 Moonbat exhibited strange behaviour between its stock and its specialist configurations, and that was that the DPS in the stock configuration was considerably higher than it was shown in the UI for the specialist configuration. In fact, the difference was 680 for stock and 632 for the specialised aircraft. It was pointed out to me by a very well-known player on the NA server, and that the Key 93 illustrated the same behaviour, which I also brought up with the World of Warplanes team. And I was unaware, although I think I was aware of this in the past, but I'd forgotten it. The XP-54 was implicated in the same problem as well. Well, I'm pleased to say that this has been fixed, and the language here, damage values were adjusted for specialist configurations of these 3 aircraft, rather suggests that they were actually affecting how the aircraft performed in game. Well, that's not great news for, insofar as the XP-54 was an extremely hard-hitting aircraft anyway, and any improvement is not going to be welcome. But hold your horses and wait to see what comes up later in the video. Anyway, an important bug fix, a big one, and well done to the World of Warplanes team. Slightly less important, marks for destroyed aircraft and ground targets repositioned on the Moonbat. The weapons on the Moonbat are now displayed correctly. Wasn't aware they weren't already, so I'll look forward to seeing those. Localization issues were fixed. Some. I have no idea what has been changed in the legal documentation. Perhaps I should root around and find out what that was. But to come back to what I think is the big news in this patch, the game balance. And we're going to talk about that now. The January 2024 patch brings changes to 3 aircraft in the game, and I'm almost thrilled to say that 2 of the most notorious aircraft in the game, the XP-54 as shown here, and also the P-61, are being nerfed. Less obviously, the Antonov Masha, the Tier 9 Soviet premium light fighter, is receiving a small buff. Before we look at the effects of the patch on these three aircraft, I'd like to put a plea into the World of Warplanes team. If you can deal with aircraft such as the XP-54 and the P-61, surely you can turn your attention to the overpowered bombers in the game. We don't want to see the B-29C Superfortress suddenly emerging, having been eclipsed by the P-61 and making a nuisance of itself again, and likewise the EF-131 and the Su-10, the two Tier 10 bombers, are also in need of a nerf, and in my opinion this would improve the game a lot. Let's discuss the changes, first on the XP-54. The patch notes say that the XP-54's armament will now feature similar accuracy and overheating times to those guns on aircraft of the same type and period. So what does this mean practically? Well, let's take a look at the 50 cals, or 12.7mm as they're called in the game, first. And prior to the patch, I had, for the auto aim angle, that is the amount you could be off target by and the game would still allow you to hit your target, a huge 5 degrees, which meant you could basically look at an aircraft without pointing the XP-54 at it and still hit it. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but 5 degrees was a huge auto aim angle. Meant you probably didn't have to aim at all. Now it's come down to 2 degrees and you really will have to aim, because this is a bad auto aim angle. You've lost 3 degrees. And I know you're not trying to deal damage with the 50 cals particularly. And the good news is that the dispersion angle, the way the bullets spread out as they leave the muzzle of the machine gun, hasn't changed, nor has the overheat time of 25 seconds. Still means that these guns are going to be an awful lot trickier. But that brings us to the 37mm, and what's happened here? Well, again, the dispersion angle has been left at 0.6, which is average for cannons. That's fine. But the auto aim angle has come down from a generous 3.5 degrees to 2.5 degrees, and that's beginning to edge into bad territory, meaning that you will have to be really careful with your aiming. So in terms of aiming, you're going to have to work a lot harder with the XP-54 from now on. Perhaps more significantly, the ridiculous burst length of 8 seconds, overheat time if you prefer, has come down to 6 seconds. That's going to make a big difference. You're not going to be able to knock aircraft out of the sky anything like as quickly as you used to be able to. Now, I would have liked to have seen this come down to 5 seconds and possibly even less, but 6 seconds may be enough. The XP-54 had previously been nerfed in that it more often faced Battle Tier 7 rather than Battle Tier 6. Combined with these nerfs, perhaps this is going to finally lead to a dramatic reduction in the popularity of this aircraft, and we won't see them plastered all over the events, making it difficult for everybody else. So well done, the World of Warplanes team. This is definitely a move in the right direction, in my opinion. So let's go and look at the P-61. With the P-61, there's a lot going on, so let's just go through the changes listed in the patch notes. Linear velocity in circular motion was increased. As a result, the aircraft will develop a higher speed in terms of that stalling, which will lead to a larger turn radius, i.e. the turn radius has been nerfed. More time will be needed to reach the maximum roll and pitch rates. Okay, this is quite a subtle change. We don't have figures for the speed at which aircraft reach their roll and pitch rates. We don't have acceleration figures. It's not unusual to be lacking this information. That's going to make the aircraft far slower, particularly for those of you who use roll, pitch and roll in your turns, to respond and get into a tight turn. And of course the turn radius has been nerfed as well, so this is pretty significant. Also, the maximum pitch rate, again we don't have figures for this, has been decreased. What we're seeing is that the aircraft is going to be a lot less nimble than it used to be, and frankly it was, in my opinion, far too nimble for a heavy. Have to wait and see what the effects of these changes are in terms of its manoeuvrability, but they look on paper to be pretty significant. Additionally, we have the armament, which has become slightly less accurate. We'll talk about that in a moment. And the overheating and cooldown rates of the weapons were adjusted to match those of similar armament installed on other aircraft. So the guns have been nerfed. Now, they weren't particularly strong guns in terms of their DPS to begin with, but they did feature a very long overheat cycle. So let's go and have a look and see what's happened here. Looking at the guns, there are 4 20mm. We can see immediately that we've come down from a pretty average auto aim angle. Again, the amount you can be off target by and the game will correct your aim for you. 3 degrees is pretty average, nice, very workable. 2.5 is beginning to get tight and you're going to have to aim a lot better. And if you're one of those who likes to fly the P-61 in turn fights, it's going to make it harder. And again, we've got a big change to the overheat time. It's lost 33% of its previous 12 seconds and come down to 8 seconds. That's pretty huge, and that's going to make the P-61 far slower to knock aircraft out of the sky, and that's going to give other aircraft therefore much more chance of knocking it out of the sky. Unfortunately, the tankiness of the aircraft hasn't been addressed, but then I felt that was in there to try and combat the threat of the B-29C, which hasn't been nerfed, unfortunately. And this is going to have a significant effect on the P-61's ability to deal with that aircraft. So we may gradually see a return to B-29Cs being spammed, which will not be welcome. On the manoeuvrability side, the only figure that we know that's changed is the turn time. Well, we can see that's changed. We know that a lot of figures have changed, but only one that we have access to, as the turn time has gone up to 13.1 seconds, and the manoeuvrability rating therefore has declined to 45. So this aircraft is going to be far less useful in turn fights. Now, I am one of those who've been using the P-61 with a turn build and in the middle of furballs to be a real nuisance to almost everything else. I don't know that these nerfs are going to change that tactic. I'm going to have to try it, but it's certainly going to be far less nimble and far less flexible in a turn fight. And it might now be the time to start considering other sorts of builds, perhaps increasing the tankiness of the aircraft so that it can actually receive more damage, or even starting to think about high energy builds. Again, these are good changes. The P-61 is, to be blunt, a dratted nuisance, certainly on the EU server. It's spammed because it's so strong, and I'd look forward to seeing the numbers of P-61s in games reduced quite considerably. My only slight concern is that concomitant with the P-61 being nerfed, I would have liked to see the B-29C, which it largely drove from the skies, being nerfed as well. And if those return in force, we may be seeing an improvement in on one hand, but going back to an old evil, the B-29C, on the other. We'll have to wait and see. But again, compliments to the World of Warplanes team. This is definitely, as far as the P-61 itself is concerned, a move in the right direction. So let's talk about the Antonov Masha. So the final changes to the Antonov M Masha. Well, can't say I was expecting a change to this aircraft, and it's a buff. It's not a nerf. And the patch notes say that it's received a longer boost, which we can see in terms of figures, but also it's got a higher acceleration. That's not something we can see. That is a hidden statistic, or as some of you call it, a soft statistic. So in terms of numbers, the boost duration has gone on the stock aircraft from 8 seconds to 10 seconds. And what this means is that if you're wondering whether you should mount an uprated engine or a high-speed gas turbine, this tilts the balance in favour of the high-speed gas turbine. Now, if you mount one of those and get it to ultimate level, fully calibrated, etc., that will bring the boost duration back down to 8 seconds. However, previously it was 6.3 seconds, which was just a little bit miserly. The Antonov Air Masha is now going to be a much better pursuit aircraft. It's going to be able to stick with fleeing heavies much better, and also it's going to more quickly get up to top speed than it used to. So this is quite a nice change. I'm not sure it's going to be a hugely significant one, but it's definitely going to be a pleasant one, and I also think it's one that you'll perceive. So those are the changes that patch 2.1.25.1 have brought to those three aircraft. There you have it. That's update 2.1.25.1 in a nutshell. Well, I hope you found that useful, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. But until the next time, this is the Noble Q, signing off.